Good morning. Welcome to First Church Unitarian here in Littleton, Massachusetts. My name is Lara Hoke, pronouns she, her, and I'm very happy and lucky to be the minister serving this wonderful congregation. We're so glad that you're here with us this morning, just as you are. We cherish your presence among us, whether it's your first Sunday here or whether you've been coming here for decades. And we hope to get to know you, the real you, better. This is a great place to be, and it's all the better today because you're here. If you need pastoral care today, you could reach out to me, or you could reach out to today's pastoral minister, Patty Sardella, or one of our other lay pastoral ministers, David Butts, Ann Darnold, Jan Dustin, or Linda Kaler. And with that, I will turn it over to Lori for Community Matters.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Lori Locascio, and I, too, am so thrilled to see each and every one of you here. I currently serve on the Standing Committee, and I'm here to welcome you this morning. First, though, take a look at your electronic devices, and I learned the hard way. I had to mute my watch, too. So check them all, put them in worship mode. I have a few announcements to lift up. There are more in the Community Matters, and it's also available online. But two that are happening today, after the service, is a new group. You may have heard Caring for Our Aging Parents and Partners. There's a new group. Don't get them confused. Caring for Our Aging Selves. And today is their first meeting at 11:30 in the Alliance Room. Their mission is to share the blessings and challenges of aging, to support each other in this fascinating time of our lives. Second is downstairs is a letter writing campaign for democracy. It's called Writing for Democracy, and the details are here, and I even think a light lunch will be served. If you have any questions, I invite you to join the coffee hour, even if you don't have questions. If you know it all, come join us in the coffee hour anyway. It's down through this door and down the stairs, and just please be aware of your neighbors as you're going to get the freshly brewed coffee. And if there's someone with a name tag and you're new-ish and you have a question, feel free to ask us. So welcome. Happy equinox.
If I can let you go as trees let go their leaves, so casually, one by one. If I can come to know what they do know, that fall is the release, the consummation, then fear of time and the uncertain fruit would not distemper the great lucid skies, this strangest autumn, mellow and acute. If I can take the dark with open eyes and call it seasonal, not harsh or strange, for love itself may need a time of sleep, and tree-like stand unmoved before the change, lose what I lose so I can keep what I can keep. The strong root still alive under the snow, love will endure if I can let go. The words of May Sarton. Let us worship. I'd like to invite up Lainey to light our chalice this morning. Lainey, that's her. Thank you, Lainey. And as Lainey lights our chalice, please join me in saying the words of our covenant. Love is the spirit of this church, and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. Please join me in singing this morning's opening hymn. It's number 163 in the gray hymnal, For the Earth Forever Turning, and I invite you to rise in body or spirit. The lyrics are also on the screens. Please be seated.
Okay, can you hear me? Good. Okay, this morning's story is called A Perfectly Messed Up Story. Okay, this is Louis' story. It's good, right? Once upon a time, little Louis was skipping merrily along. Tra-la-la-la-la, he sang, for in his heart, Louis knew everything was just, hey, hold on, what's that? A jelly stain? How did that get here? This isn't right. Who would eat a jelly sandwich while reading my book? Plop. Jelly and peanut butter. Ah, the chunky kind. Hey, hey, hey! Somebody's fingerprints are all over this. Oh no. What next? Orange juice? Ugh! My story is all messed up. to show some respect here. Books are important. They teach us stuff, and they inspire us. Now, can I please get on with my story? Thank you. Okay, from the top. Once upon a time, little Louis went skipping merrily along. Tra-la-la-la, la. You've got to be kidding me. This is awful. Quick, get a paper towel. Rub, 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 rub. Careful, careful. Ah! This is the worst thing ever. What am I gonna do? Once upon a time. Stop, forget it. My story's ruined. It's all over. I'm just a messy old book that'll end up in a garage sale, a book no one will ever want to read or love. I give up. Go on without me. This is Louis' story. Who cares? Once upon a time, little Louis went skipping merrily along. Tra-la-la-la-la, he sang. Oh, life was so much simpler back then. For in his heart, he knew everything was just what? Just what? Fine. Wow, everything is fine. I'm still here, you're still reading, and it's a pretty good story, messes and all. So come on, let's finish this. This is Louis' story. I love it, and nothing's gonna stop me. The end.
you might notice that we have a different community response this morning, so I just draw your attention to it so that you won't rush into the old one. Each week we do take an offering to support the good works of this congregation as we are self-supporting, and we rely on the generosity of our members and friends to do our ministries internally and also beyond these walls. This morning's offering will now be given and received in grateful appreciation. Please join with me in the words of our community response. May we be transformed by our giving, and may the world be transformed by our gifts. You like that one? Okay. Then I'll tell you, it comes from my colleague, the Reverend Emily Gage. We went to seminary together. She's great. If you didn't like it, I would have not said that. But okay. Many weeks we have a special time that we call our Candles of Caring, and this is an opportunity to share those cares, those joys, sorrows, and concerns that are dearest to you this morning with this gathered beloved community. If you have a heartfelt joy, sorrow, or concern that you would like to share, we invite you to come up to the microphone. Sorry, I should have told you that. Invite you to come up to the microphone and say your name and let us know briefly how we might direct our thoughts, prayers, or healing wishes. and you can come along the sides to speed it up if you wish. And if you would like the microphone brought to you where you are in the pews, we will do that as well. And later, we'll have a time to ask people on Zoom if they would like to share anything. Please just raise the hand in the response area, reactions area, rather, of Zoom. Are there any candles this morning? Let this represent all the joys and sorrows that are with us this morning, but that remain in our hearts. Please join with me in the spirit of meditation or prayer. Once again, we have come together, sharing those cares dearest to us with this gathered, beloved community. Let us hold in our hearts, our thoughts, and perhaps our prayers, those joys and sorrows that were spoken aloud this morning, as well as those that remain unspoken, as we share together in a time of sacred silence. Amen, and blessed be. There's a phrase that gets stuck in my head every now and then like an earworm. And believe it or not, it's a phrase that comes from the Bible. It's a phrase specifically from the book of Ecclesiastes, part of the Hebrew Scriptures, probably in the most famous section of that book, thanks to Pete Seeger and the folk song, Turn, Turn, Turn. And most of the lyrics of that song are straight out of Ecclesiastes. So the part that's been sticking in my head is that famous verse about there being a season for everything. There's a time and a purpose for everything under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to reap and a time to sow, a time to tear down and a time to build up. And that's really what I've been wrestling with for the past several years, actually. A time to tear down and a time to build up. The first time I remember that phrase, a time to tear down, a time to build up, getting stuck in my head, was several years back. I was driving to my hometown in Pennsylvania to visit my mother and my sisters, as I have been doing forever. It's a familiar trip, to say the least, and I usually drive the same way. And at the end, just as I'm approaching my mother's house, right at the very end of the trip, I would look over and see a very familiar sight off to the right, which was simply a Wendy's fast food restaurant. But then this one trip, I looked over and it was gone, a complete teardown. Now, you might wonder why I'm even noticing that. Why I would pass by Wendy's and sort of wave and say a silent hello. And that's because that was my first job when I was a teenager. I worked one summer in the mid-'80s in the drive-through window, part of the assembly line. And just as you would give your order in the drive-through, just as you said it, I was making it. So you wanted a burger, so I flapped the burger on the bun, and you want some mustard, okay, put the mustard on. You want onions, put onions on. You want ketchup, I put ketchup on. Then you say, oh, wait, no mustard. And I'd have to just throw the whole thing aside and start over again. And that was kind of the job. But, it was this part of my past. So I would always look over and see it, and there was something comforting about it whenever I drove back. But it makes me sad, even though I haven't eaten meat since 1998, and it doesn't usually make me sad to see a meat-focused restaurant shut down. But this one had so much sentimental value, so it was a loss, a literal landmark of my life gone. And some losses, of course, run much deeper than that. A few years after that Wendy's disappeared, the beautiful elementary school building where I spent 6 really pretty happy and formative years of my life, that beautiful elementary school building was completely torn down. That was a definite loss. I have some friends from seminary, some colleagues who went to different seminaries than I did, and they've had to deal with their entire school going away. One example you might know, Andover Newton Theological School, which trains many Unitarian Universalist ministers in Newton, Massachusetts. It's not there in the same form anymore. They sold their campus completely. They're now sort of a subset of Yale Divinity School. Really nowhere near here, really a completely different animal. That's hard. Maybe you've experienced this. A building from your past gone, or even harder, an institution from your past gone. Sites of formative memories just gone. But I remember the other part of the phrase, there's a time to tear down and there's a time to build up. And sometimes something has to give in order for something new to happen. Sometimes you do have to tear something down to build something up. It's that whole balance of letting go so you can make room for something new that might work better now for you. The other reason I've been thinking about this phenomenon in recent years is that it wasn't that long ago, really, that my wife Emily and I sold our house in Worcester and moved to an apartment in Lowell. And we moved not long before I started here at FCU. And some of you have gone through this process of selling a home, and we know one of our dear friends is in the throes of it right now. And it's a lot, all the painting and little projects and things you fix, things you lived with broken for 20 years that now you're getting fixed right before you sell it. But the hardest part, really for us, and I suspect for many, is letting go of stuff. We knew we would have to let go of a lot of stuff because our new home was going to be hundreds of square feet smaller than the last one. And it was an interesting process deciding what to let go of. And some of you might know if you've lived in the same place or if you've ever lived in the same place a long time, and we had been in that Worcester home for about 17 years, you save all kinds of crazy things. And sometimes it's easy to know that you should let go of something. If it's something that's supposed to have utility that no longer has utility, like something that's broken that you thought you were going to get fixed, but you never got fixed, so okay, we can let that go. Or maybe that chest full of clothes that you thought maybe someday would fit again, and you open up the chest, and not only is that never going to fit again, it's not even your style anymore. So yeah, okay, you can let that go. But some things are harder. I had a box that was in my closet in that home in Worcester for 17 years. It was a box just filled with trophies and ribbons. Now, we're not even talking about young adult achievements. We're talking about elementary school trophies. Yeah, we're talking about Little League baseball trophies. I don't want to brag, but we're talking about a 6th grade spelling bee trophy. And so they were in this box labeled trophies in the back of my closet, 17 years not seeing the light of day. And before that, they spent about 15 years in my mother's house in the back of a closet not seeing the light of day. So they'd been in a box more than 30 years. Somehow, in the process of moving, I opened up that box and looked at them, and it was just, I don't know. But I used a method that had been recommended to me. You've probably heard of it, Marie Kondo. Her famous method. She wrote a best-selling book about the Japanese art of decluttering. And One of the tips she gives is quite famous. It's the one everyone seems to know whether or not they've read the book. You take the object, you hold it, and you think about it, and you ask, does this spark joy? And if it still sparks joy, you keep it. And if it doesn't, you let it go. Well, that worked pretty well on the trophies, because the truth is when I untaped the box and held them, they didn't really bring me joy. It was more like this weird, clingy nostalgia or something, but it wasn't joy. So they're gone. Unfortunately, this is before I made trophies for you guys to have to figure out how to get rid of. So they're in a landfill somewhere. But you know, I had to take pictures of them first so I could let them go. I mean, really. But I tried this method on lots of things, and I tried it on something else during our last move, in case you were wondering. Let me see if the plug reaches. Not quite. So you'll have to live with it unplugged, but I don't know if you can see what this is, but it's a lovely lamp with a sort of mermaidish woman and a mermanish man. And let's call it a seldom seen shade of green or something. Yeah, and lovely shells. It's nautical. And, you know, I don't know, is it from the 60s, the 70s? What do you think? I don't know, 60s. And so, yes, I held it in my hands and I said, does this still spark joy? And yeah, it did. So clearly the Marie Kondo method is not perfect. This has now moved with me 5 times. It's probably going to come with me to the nursing home. But as I think about all this, and I think about what makes the cut and what doesn't, you just have to think about what sparks joy for you, what has lasting value in your life, and what doesn't. What's essential for you, and what's temporarily something that you want in your life. What's transient for you, and what's more permanent. For Unitarian Universalist ministers, and maybe even for some long time UU lay people, when you hear transient and permanent, you might think of the, for us, famous sermon, The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity, a sermon by a Unitarian minister and transcendentalist that I mentioned briefly last week, Theodore Parker. And Theodore Parker preached this sermon, The Transient and the Permanent in Christianity, and it was a big deal at the time, back when sermons were sometimes cultural milestones. It was a famous sermon back when there were famous sermons. And he preached it in 1841, the same year that this building went up. So Theodore Parker was a Unitarian minister, and some think that he was the most important minister of the mid-19th century, back when the Unitarians were definitely still Christians, though that far radical end of the Protestant Reformation. Parker preached this sermon, and it would have been to thousands of people. He had a congregation in Boston that had thousands of people attending it in the pews. And at the time, the sermon would have been totally shocking. He attempted to spell out for people just what was of permanent importance in Christianity and what was ultimately transitory, not much more than window dressing. And when he preached the sermon, I'm sure that people gasped or clutched their pearls or their medallions, because the list of things that were transient to him was a lot longer than the list of things that were permanent. For Theodore Parker, some of the transient things about Christianity included stories of the miracles of Jesus. Not important, he said. All the Christian creeds and doctrines. Not important, he said. The forms of church clergy, church buildings. Not important. The theological question that had defined Unitarianism, namely, was Jesus uniquely God incarnate, literally divine, or was Jesus a human being? Not important. The question of whether Jesus was a historical human being who actually lived, or whether he was, in fact, a myth, Parker said, not important. It doesn't really matter, he said, because as far as he was concerned, not even those things were what's true and important about Christianity. Those are all details. But like good transcendentalists, as I talked about last Sunday, he thought that you could intuit things and learn from your own experiences. He thought you could even intuit truth. You could know what was true through your own searching. What he thought was permanent in Christianity was its absolute capital T truth, which, by the way, is what he said was the absolute truth of every world religion, and that was to love and worship God as you understand God, and to love your neighbor as yourself. Something like the golden rule. For him, that was the capital T truth of all religion. Everything else, detail. Therefore, ultimately, for him, even Christianity becomes a kind of detail. He said that Jesus summed this up himself when he was asked in all three synoptic gospels, Matthew, Mark, and Luke, what's the most important commandment? And Jesus said, the first is to love the Lord God with all your heart and soul and mind. And the second, said Jesus, is like the first, to love your neighbor as yourself. All the rest, Jesus said, all the law and prophets, Jesus said, much less important, a kind of detail. And then right after Jesus gives this answer in the Gospel of Luke, he immediately tells the story of the Good Samaritan. So we know that when he said neighbor, he meant the term broadly, including people that aren't just like you. All of this begs the question, what's transient and what's permanent in 21st century Unitarian Universalism? What's transient and permanent right here at FCU? And I would say it's really the same answer, just in modern language. The first thing would be what we have called our seventh principle. Instead of using the language loving God, I would say to cherish and nurture the interdependent web of all existence of which we are a part, to feel that oneness, to respect that. That's probably the most important thing for some of us. But the second permanent thing may or may not be your second, maybe your first, would be what we have called our first principle, to cherish and nurture the inherent worth and dignity of every person. Those are the things that are really at the heart. And now with our new second article of the UUA's bylaws that states that love is at the center of all of our values and siding with love is or should be at the heart of all we do, that is another way of saying what is permanent, the permanent element of Unitarian Universalism. It's a kind of paraphrase of Jesus' short version of what was transient and permanent in Judaism. It's a kind of paraphrase of what Theodore Parker said was permanent in Christianity. Siding with love in all things. That's permanent. So I think about what we do each week. Every week, we come together in this space, sit in the pews. It's a beautiful space. Some of us manage our way up these stairs to speak. We sound the singing bowl. We light the chalice. But these are transient things. These are all details, really. In 50 years or 100 years, will Unitarian Universalists still light a chalice? I don't know. Will they still share joys and sorrows? I'm not sure. Will we still be sounding our singing bowl? Maybe, I don't know. But it's all detail. Maybe there won't even be Unitarian Universalism by that name in 50 years. After all, Theodore Parker might have been a little surprised to find that eventually not all Unitarians would call themselves Christians. Maybe something similar will happen as we evolve. I don't know. But the important part is what we're doing for the earth and its inhabitants, how we're doing that in our lives individually, and how we're doing it together. And so my question for us this morning is there something that we need to tear down here at First Church Unitarian? Is there something that we need to let go of to build space for something different? Is there a way that we need to shift emphasis on certain transient parts of what we do and how we've arranged things to make room for doing the work of what is at the heart of what we do better? That Wendy's that got torn down is now a much-needed parking space for a lot of medical facilities that are now right there in my hometown. My childhood elementary school had been unused for years, decades even, and now, with the building gone, it's a lovely park with a playground, very well used by kids in the town. Emily and I were rattling around that house in Worcester, as nice as it was, in a city that was no longer our best fit. And with each of those things, as with any change, there's always some loss. But there's always gain, and sometimes there's a big gain. So can we tear down those things that need to be torn down in our lives? Make the room that we need to make to build up the things that deserve more space in our lives? Can we, to paraphrase May Sarton's words in our call to worship, can we be tree-like, standing unmoved before change, losing what we lose to keep what we can keep, the strong roots still alive underneath, with love enduring? May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Our closing hymn is in the teal hymnal, lyrics also on the screens. It's number 1017, Building a New Way. And I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Friends, for our closing words, I invite you, if you're comfortable, to hold hands with the person next to you, as is our tradition, or if you prefer, touch elbows or shoulders or feet, whatever's comfortable for you, or simply hold your hands up and feel the energy between us. Let us build a new way that's really the old way, the right way. May we build on what is permanently important in our lives, in our tradition, siding with love, respecting the earth, cherishing nature and the cosmos, and loving our neighbor as ourselves. May we let go of what we need to let go of to make room for siding with love in all we do. May it be so. Blessed be, and amen. Please be seated.
Hello. There we go.
Anybody who wants to, feel free to unmute now for coffee hour.
Hi.
Hi.
Oh,
Congratulations, Mary.
Thank you, Anne. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'm going to join the ranks hopefully in January.
Oh,
No, this is